Axe calls Cassie a traitor to her face and walks off, all the more confused and angry. It's here that he finds Tobias, who calmly reveals that he followed Axe when he contacted the Andalite fleet the last time, and asks if Axe is going to help his people burn Earth. Tobias has also been mulling over the idea of Yeerks no longer needing host bodies thanks to morphing. But the Yeerks would want to acquire humans, other sentient creatures as well, not just cats and dogs. Yeah. But we have always said it is wrong, especially without first receiving the person's permission. I cannot imagine a Yeerk asking permission to acquire a human's DNA, and I cannot imagine many humans who would freely give their DNA to a Yeerk. Tobias adjusted his wings and appeared to tighten his talons on the branch. Maybe you're right. I don't know. Look, Axe, it's a whole new world. We're having to make all this up as we go along. There aren't any rules falling out of the sky telling us what and what not to do. What exactly do you mean? Too hard to explain right now, Tobias said. I just mean that we don't really have any time-tested rules for dealing with these issues, like the morality of acquiring someone's DNA. So we have to see what works and what doesn't. We can't afford to get so locked into one idea that we defend it to the death without really knowing if that idea works in the real world. Thank you! It's so nice to have a character step back and realize just how undefined their situations are. I've long talked about the idea of science fiction morality, the struggle one has as both a reader and a writer over the morality of something that flat out doesn't exist and has no real-life analog. The morality of acquiring the DNA of sentient beings is one such example, and having the characters finally realize that this idea is so new that the morality around it hasn't even been written yet. It's so vindicating. This idea seems to flip a switch for Axe, as if a whole range of possibility spaces opened up and has allowed him to think outside the ideas of loyalty and, look, Axe just kind of gets along with everybody now. It's kind of sudden and ill-explained. It's just, emotional conflict over then. Which is all well and good, because it's time to focus on the plan at hand. It's a pretty elaborate setup that requires the cooperation of virtually everyone, including the Animorphs, the auxiliaries, the Hork-Bajir, and even the parents. Pretty much everyone but the Chi. Where the hell have those guys been, anyway? The parents are led to a segment of highway where a National Guard team are fixing up a broken water line. The parents have been roughing it for a few weeks now, so they look the part when they wander out of the woods and claim to have gotten lost while camping. Marco's dad does most of the talking. He's a surprisingly good actor. And soon the parents are loaded into 3 trucks and taken to the nearby base to be examined, the Animorphs hitching a ride the way Animorphs do. At the base, Marco's father gets separated from everybody, and a couple of Hork-Bajir knock out the drivers of the other 2 trucks. It's the dead of night, and there's no activity besides some guards watching over what turns out to be 12 unmarked warehouses. So the team knocks out all the guards and starts systematically checking these warehouses. A little less daunting when you remember there's like 30 people here. There's no way the original 6 could pull off a heist this big. Tuan's even there. This is the book where they forgot to change Tuan's name to Timmy. On one hand, no weird, kind of insensitive South Park reference. On the other hand, now all the readers are like, who the hell is Tuan? Eventually, they stumble onto explosives and start loading them haphazardly into the truck. But that's when the alarm goes off, and everyone goes into panic mode. Things get tense. "Where are you going?" Jake yelled. Marco, still in gorilla morph, stopped and turned to face Jake. "To get my dad." "Stop right now, or I'll get Toby to stop you." Marco laughed disbelievingly. "You'll do what?" Jake stared stonily. "Get back here. Now!" he ordered. "I'm going to get my dad," Marco repeated. Jake shook his head. "Nobody leaves this fight now. This is it. The real deal. Maybe the last one. We came in together. We're going out together. I'm not risking having to leave one of my team behind. Get it?" Marco stood, hesitant, uncertain. I watched, holding my breath. Jake was Marco's best friend, but it was Marco's father who would be stranded on base, possibly at the mercy of the Yeerks. Would Marco acknowledge Jake's authority? Would this mission hold together? "For God's sake, Marco," Rachel's mother shouted. "Let's get loaded and get out of here. Your dad will be fine. Come on!" For once, a bossy and impatient adult was exactly what was needed. Marco lopped back towards the trucks. The Animorphs and their parents load into the trucks and try to make it to the gate in time, but rows of armed soldiers get in their way. Rachel almost rams through them in one of her trademark blood rages and has to be wrestled away from the wheel by both her mother and Axe. Naomi's really pulling her weight this time around. So the Animorphs have decided to trade in their National Guard ally for this book. Colonel Larson, man, he is so yesterday. Only dweebs still use Larson. Now the cool kids are all about Captain Olston, leader of this National Guard base that just kind of magically appeared right next to the Animorphs' hometown. Olston is so 2008, while Larson is 2000 late. Upgrade to Captain Olston today. Jake gets out of the truck and approaches Olston, who seems very reasonable and not a controller. Jake asks up front if Olston believes in aliens, and then Axe demorphs from human to Andalite in front of the troops to get their attention. Then the Hork-Bajir reveal themselves, and it's dawning on Olston that maybe the whole thing with the governor wasn't a hoax. Captain Olston nodded, murmured something about aliens speaking more perfect English than most of his troops. There's one more thing, Jake proceeded to tell the captain the Animorph story, beginning with Elfangor. Oh boy, settle down, kids, it's story time. So we were walking through an old construction site when... Then we learned Jeremy Jason McCulp, the guy from Powerhouse, he was going to be on the show too. But it turns out my cousin is allergic to crocodiles, so... I don't know how involved the National Guard is with Zone 91, but it's just an Andalite toilet. So we tracked the villains to the amusement park where... Instant oatmeal, I know! So we turned into moles and... The T-Rex has almost swallowed me by this point, so I grabbed on the tongue and... No, this was before we met the broccoli harvesting crab monsters. And then... Good Rachel and evil Rachel, but don't worry, we had our android friends shock them with electricity and now she's all better. Possessed by an Andalite ghost. Fish people of Atlantis. Buffalo with morphing powers. Chased them into Marco's body. His Civil War journal. And so we hugged it out, forgave Cassie, and that about catches us up to right now. Any questions? Yeah, I've got one. How are the people on this base so naive onto what's going on around here? This base is right next to the city where Hork-Bajir are openly hurting the masses underground. I'm sure most people called the police, but I gotta think at least one person thought to call the nearest military facility to get this sorted out. Combine that with the mysterious National Guard movements that led to what an outsider perspective might seem like a National Guard civil war, and the governor's public announcement, and even if the Yeerks are keeping your forces in the dark, you gotta be the tiniest bit curious, right? But Olsen isn't entirely ready to buy all of this, even after seeing actual aliens and morphing with his own eyes. Thankfully, Rachel's mom is there. Naomi, what in the world are you doing here? The captain said. Rachel's mother and the captain shook hands. How are you, sir? The captain smiled weakly. Under the circumstances, fine, and still a soldier, thanks to you. Rachel's mom turned to the rest of us. I represented Captain Olson's oldest son when he was wrongly accused of car theft. The captain smiled warmly. You'll never know how grateful my family is. If Robert had been convicted, I probably would have resigned in order to keep pressing his case. You saved my son's future and my career. Maybe you should have led with that, guys. Seriously, Naomi is the surprise MVP of this book. You can shove as much hard evidence under this guy's nose as you want. He isn't going to do anything until his lawyer says it's okay. So after a lot of talking and convincing, Captain Olsen and his troops are on the team. They reload the trucks more efficiently this time, start prepping some timers, and they start to make their way to what could be their final stand. The parents were thanked and asked to return immediately to camp. There they would wait for news on the mission's success or failure. They did not argue. Rachel's mother kissed her daughter on the cheek and then stepped back into the shadows. Marco shook his father's hand and hugged his mother, proud but protective. Tobias had morphed to human to say goodbye to his mother. He held her hand, reassuring her that all would be well. Cassie and her parents put their arms around each other and touched their foreheads together for a moment before parting. I knew what was happening, Everyone was saying whatever it is that one says to friends and family when they realize they might be parted forever. I had not had such a chance with either of my parents or my brother, Alfangor. Jake had not had such a chance with his family either. Jake, my prince, stood alone and apart. This might be our last night alive. I knew he felt keenly the absence of his own family. I could not be his family. He could not be mine. But I could be his friend. I walked over to him. "You are my prince," I said, "and whatever happens next, know that I am proud to have served you." Jake smiled wistfully and put his hand on my shoulder. "Axe, for the last time. Yes? Don't call me Prince." The team drive their way into the city and up to one of the subway entrances. They quickly incapacitate the guards and make their way into the station. After the citizens there have scattered, it comes down to a fight between the Animorphs and a selection of the auxiliaries versus 10 armed human controllers. Human controllers who immediately disarm themselves and morph wolves and a rhino, because, Yeerks believe in fair play and all. The fight is written very quick and hectic, as it would be in real life, but I kinda wish we got more details about the Animorphs fighting the guy in the rhinomorph. It's probably the toughest animal in the room, and the fight kinda has a mini-boss feel to it. Instead, we get about a page of violence before the Ulston's troops walk in and just shoot up the place. Oh, guns! Guns work? Hey guys, guns work! Why haven't we tried guns before? So everyone starts loading the explosives into an empty subway car. They need some of the team to get on the train and some to stay behind, and pretty much everyone volunteers for the suicide mission. Eventually, they decide on Axe, who kind of considers himself a traitor of both the Analytes and the Animorphs at this point. Cassie, because Jake needs someone who can make the hard decisions, and y'all know Cassie has such a great track record with that. And Marco, because of, reasons? Seriously, they don't even try to give a reason for Marco to be there. So the three of them get on the subway train and get it going. As it runs through other stations, it gets shot up by the Yeerks, which causes a live wire to come loose. And then 3 blue band Hork-Bajir reveal themselves. I guess they were secretly on the train the whole time and waited until the last minute to stop this. But it's okay because James was also secretly on the train for no good reason, and he swipes at the Hork-Bajir in red-tailed Hawkmorph, which causes all 3 of them to grab the same passenger bar at the exact moment the live wire touches it, electrocuting the Hork-Bajir dead, and James flies out a window without saying a word. This scene is, stupid. Yeah, that's it, stupid. So the train reaches the end of the line, which is a cliff overlooking the Yeerk pool. Well, the Yeerks were never the smartest when it came to structural planning, and the train just plops off the cliff and crashes directly into the pool. The 3 Animorphs manage to speed morph Cockroach just in time to survive the crash. They get out of the train and try to get the attention of the panicking crowd. The timer is set to 5 minutes, which the Animorphs figured was the maximum amount of time they could give the Yeerks to escape the explosion without giving them enough time to defuse the bombs. Once the crowd gets the gist of this and start making for the exit, the 3 Animorphs rush over to free the people in cages waiting for infestation. And then some of the Yeerks start helping them. It might be part of the Yeerk peace movement, or these might just be decent beings who don't want to see helpless people die. Visor 1 pops in for like a second, but even he knows that boom things are bad things and makes a hasty retreat. Having saved everyone that they can, the 3 Animorphs morph bird and take to the air, just as the bombs explode, tearing the Yeerk pool apart. By some miracle, the Animorphs manage to dodge debris and get out alive. The Yeerk pool, the center of the invasion, has been destroyed. 3 years ago, the Animorphs walked into hell and were forced back. Today, they ripped hell asunder. All the Animorphs perch and view the destruction, a sinkhole the size of 10 city blocks right in the middle of the city. And while this is perhaps their greatest victory, the Animorphs just can't get excited about it. The book ends with the Blade ship hovering over the destroyed city for all to see. The final battle has begun.
Oh boy, today's the day. Today I reopen my lot. And with everybody else getting infested by those alien guys, I'll be the only competition in town. Even slugs from space have to drive, right? And here we are, dealing damned hawks, used car and poultry. What happened to... Where did it... What? Oh, that's the last straw, you fucking elephant. You're gonna die.
Post-book follow-up. This is a book of really great moments that are just kind of structured weird. This book is pretty much cut in half, with the first half being Axe's emotional turmoil and the other half being the mission to blow up the Yeerk pool, which is fine. Each part gets a decent amount of time, and it doesn't feel like two books crammed into one like number 45, The Revelation. But they don't really click together as well as they could. Part of that is due to how abruptly the Axe's emotional turmoil stuff ends. Tobias says a thing totally unrelated to Axe's feelings towards humanity or Cassie's betrayal or Axe's relationship with his people, and suddenly Axe is like, oops, yep, I guess I'm over that. Let's go blow up the Yeerk pool. This is Axe's final fully narrated book, and in that regard it has a lot of similarities to number 48, The Return, Rachel's last book. Not so much for the plot, but in that it cranks up the characters' emotional angst and personal struggles up to 11 without actually giving them any proper closure. Axe struggles over having to choose between his own people and the Animorphs. That's pretty much every Axe book in this series. This book is just angrier about it. It's not badly written. Kimberly Morris is one of the better wordsmiths in the ghostwriter stable, and it's always nice to see characters super mad at Cassie, but it is a retread, and one without a satisfying conclusion. Of course, Axe chooses to side with the Animorphs. That's how it falls every time. But how he gets to that point is clunky, and it's a safe option, at a time in the series when you don't actually have to play it safe. My mind is poring over 1,000 fan-fiction-y what-if scenarios of Axe actually choosing the Andalites for once, how that could change the conflict in the final two books. But, didn't happen. Oh well. As for the second half, there's a lot to like here. I love seeing everyone coming together, and I love how active the Animorphs' parents are in the plot, especially Marco's dad and Rachel's mom. Cassie's parents and Lauren don't get too much to do, but at least they're there, loading trucks and stuff. The destruction of the Yeerk pool is an amazing landmark moment in the series, no doubt, and I love how melancholy all the characters feel at the end. This is the greatest victory the Animorphs have ever had, and it's also a lot of senseless death and violence, and at best, it's just delaying what must seem like an inevitable destruction. Not everything in this segment lands, however, especially that weird bit with the blue band horror midget on the subway train, which seemed contrived and pointless. Also, could we get a flowchart as to the status of the National Guard at any given moment? So yeah, could have used some retooling, maybe one more draft, but that doesn't take away from the big emotions and firework ending. As the final Axe book, as the final ghost-written book, as the final book before the final battle, it's pretty damn good. Yeah, I give number 52, The Sacrifice, a 7 out of 10.